Hi everyone. So this is operations on operations on expressions with negative and fractional exponents. All right, so pause and try the do now. Okay, so remember that if you have a straight line, that's 180, right? If this is 60, that's 120. So the first thing I did was I did 180 minus 106 and got 74. So that means this angle right here is 74. If I had 74 and 23, that gives me 97. So those two add up to 97. I have a triangle. What do the angles in a triangle add up to? 180. So then 180 minus 97 is 1783. So that means this angle is 83. So then finally, what is the value of x? These are supplementary. Again, 180 minus 83 brings us back to 97 degrees, and that's your answer. Now, if you said the answer was 74, these aren't parallel lines, so be careful with that. So it's not 74. A lot of kids came up with lots of different answers. The faster way to do it is, if you remember, most kids don't, the exterior angle. So this is our exterior angle, is the sum of the two remote angles, the two angles it's not right next to. So when we added 74 and 23, we got 97. So that's kind of the faster way, but you don't need that. You don't need to have that memorized necessarily, because you can go about it this way also. Excuse me. All right, so we're going to go through and rewrite these expressions. These are kind of our rules. So if you remember from Algebra 1, you should have learned negative exponent is just really a fraction. It's 1 over x to the n, right? So whenever you see a negative exponent, what it does is if you move it to the denominator, it'll become positive, right? So for example, 2 to the negative third is 1 over 2 to the third, or 1 over 8. Now, what if you have a constant in front? Now, while we like to say that a and the x are kind of the same, they're the same term, they are separate. That a has its own exponent of a positive 1. So when we rewrite it, the a is going to stay on top. Only the thing with the negative exponent moves, right? So a on top, and then x to the n, it crosses down to the denominator and switches signs. All right, so now what if the negative is in the denominator? What do you think we do? Well, all we're going to do is move it up, right? So it's going to join that 1. So 1x to the n over 1, which is just x to the n, right? Right, so that denominator, there's nothing left there, so it's a 1. There was that 1 in front. I would write the answer as that. All right, and then the last one, you have a constant in front of the x to the negative n. Does it move? That doesn't have a negative exponent. It's a 1, so it stays in the bottom. The x to the n is going to move up top, and then we switch the sign. So I like to think of it as we cross the line, we change the sign. I cross the fraction line, I change my exponent sign. All right, I never numbered these. I'm going to go through and number them. So go through and try these 6 problems. See if you can figure them out. Pause and do the best you can with it. Okay, x to the negative 3, that's just 1 over x to the third. It's a negative exponent, so it becomes a fraction. There's no constant. The coefficient's a 1, so 1 on top. In number 2, the 5 does not have a negative exponent. It's staying in the numerator. And then the x to the 2 drops down. It becomes positive. Number 3, anything that doesn't have a negative stays put. So the 2 and the 7 are staying put. They're not moving. X to the negative 4 is what needs to move. It's on the bottom, so we're going to move it on top. Number 4, now those are both negative, so what do you think we should do? Well, this needs to drop down, so it becomes a to the positive 8. And the b is negative, has to go up, b to the first, or just b. Now what if there are numbers in front? Same idea, the 3 and the 4 aren't moving. They don't have negative exponents. It's really 3 to the first, 4 to the first. M comes up and n goes down. All right, last one, a little trickier. What's the only thing that's not going to move? The 5. Because unlike in the last one, see how this one has parentheses? So this time the 2 is being raised to a negative power because it's in parentheses to the negative 3. So I'm going to take that 2a and put it in the bottom to the third, and the b to the negative 2 goes up top. Now I can simplify this. What's 2a to the third? 2 to the third is 8a cubed. So my final answer, I'm going to multiply the 5 and the 8 together, so 48 to the third. And that's my final answer. Okay, so now let's talk about fractional exponents. This comes out a little weird on the program I used to type this. So this is x to the n over m. That is an exponent. It's a little large. So a fractional exponent is just a root, right? We're rewriting it as a root. Here's how I remember where things go. The denominator is, well, this is called our index. If I had x to the third, there's really, I think of it as 3 over 1. So the top numbers are exponent, and that stays with the x. The denominator gives us our root, right? So the top number is our exponent, the bottom number is the root or the index. All right, so again, pause, try these on your own. So we're up to 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So we have our root. The denominator is the index, so 4, and then b to the third. And that's it. Right? Think of it as 3 times a quarter. The 1/4 is your root, the 3 is your exponent. And the way we say this is the 4th root of b cubed. The 4th root of b cubed. All right, so how about number 8? So that 5 is just chilling in the front. Right? And then I have my root. The index is the 3x squared. Right? So 5 times the cubed root of x squared. All right, 9, we're getting a little more difficult. What do you think we have to do there? Well, we have a negative. So I'm going to start off by getting rid of the negative. How do I get rid of a negative exponent? So just like before, we're going to drop it to the denominator, and then I'm going to rewrite it as a root. So we have x to the first and 2. Okay, but we don't really need that first, right? And then what is that? How would you say that, do you think? The second root, what's another word when we have an exponent of a 2? The square root. So a square root is the same as a square root like that. The invisible root is a 2, right? If I gave you that, you'd say, oh, it's 5 because the square root of 25 is 5. So there's an invisible 2 that we don't write. You can write it if it makes you happy. I don't. Right? So my answer looks like that. So that's how my final answer. Anytime you have a 1/2, that's just a square root. Okay, so the denominator's a 2, so it's a regular square root. 7x to the third. Notice the parentheses. So I'm going to simplify that. What's 7 to the third? 343 x to the third. That's it. All right, last one. I don't know why, but I always switch colors for the last problem. All right, I'm going to start by getting rid of my fraction, my negative. So if you got stuck, start with rewriting it without a negative. So that's 1 over 3x to the 4/3. The 3 is stuck in the parentheses. It's not a 3 on top. Then I'm going to write it as a root. So 1 over the cubed root 3x to the 4th. Right? And then what's 3 to the 4th? So it's the cubed root 3 to the 4th, that's 81, x to the 4th. And this is my final answer. Okay, so we're going to go back to some negative exponents. So these are where we are multiplying and things like that. Remember our rules. When you multiply, right, what's x squared times x to the 3rd? You just add, right? When you multiply, you add. When you divide, you subtract. And how about x squared to the 3rd? What is that? 3. You multiply, right? An exponent to an exponent, we multiply. So here, we've got a bunch of w's, we're multiplying. So what do we do to exponents when we multiply? We add. So 5 minus 8 plus 6 equals 3. So w to the 3rd, done. That's it. So there's a few ways to do this type. I think the easiest way is to start with just distributing that. So when we have a power to a power, we multiply. So r to the 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And then c to the 12th, negative 4 times negative 3. And then if you have to move anything, move it. So the only thing with a negative is the r to the negative 6. So c12 is going to stay. The r6 has to flip down. And then there's nothing left on top, so what do we put? 1. That's it. C. All right, so we're dividing. What do we do when we divide? We subtract. So be careful with these, though. So we have 8, m to the 5th, n, and now remember it's top minus bottom, so negative 4 minus negative 6. And I do recommend writing that out because a lot of students mess these up. It's not that it's hard. You're trying to do integers in your head, and you just get confused. N squared, that's the answer. All right, again, for letter D, distribute that 3, that outside first. It'll make it life easier. So 4 times 3 is 12. Negative 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. X squared, y 4. And then whatever makes more sense to you. You can think of it as, okay, I'm going to divide. When I divide, I subtract. Oops, I wrote that wrong. That's x to the 3rd, not x squared. So then we have 12 minus 3 is 9. And then negative 9 minus 4 is negative 13. And then rewrite it. So you can do it that way. The other way I do, what I usually do, is I just think about where it's going to end up. So this gives me my x to the 9. It's going to be on top. And then this one, I want to move this guy down here. So I would do 4 minus negative 9 instead. So I know that it has to be on the bottom because that's where it'll be positive. So I do 4 minus negative 9, which is 13. Whichever makes more sense to you. It's your brain. You know, everyone learns differently. Okay, getting a little harder. So, we are multiplying. So what do you do when you multiply? We add. So I'm going to kind of separate this. I have for my x's, I have a 2 and a 2/3. What's 2 plus 2/3? So that's 6 over 3 plus 2 over 3. So that's x to the 8/3. Right? And then we have 1/3 for y minus 1. That's 1/3 minus 3 over 3, which is negative 2/3. So we're just following those same rules, and then we're going to rewrite it. So I've got x to the 8/3 over y to the positive 2/3. It flips. And then finally write them as a root. The cubed root of x to the 8th over the cubed root of y squared. It's not that much harder. It's just scary because of the fractions. All right, what do we do first? Again, notice I have a parentheses with an exponent, so I'm going to distribute. All right, we multiply. How do you multiply fractions? 2 times -4 is -8 over 3 times 5 is 15. So m squared, n to the -2/3. So then I can put the m squared and the -8/15 together. So 2 plus -8 over 15. That's 30 over 15 minus 8 over 15. So 22 over 15. So we end up getting m to the 22 over 15, n to the -2/3. And then I'm going to rewrite that. So this is the 15th m to the 22nd over the cubed root of n squared. Goes to the bottom since it's negative. So I always do the multiplying first, right? Kind of like order of operations. I multiply first, then I add my exponents, then I simplify and rewrite. All right, this will be our last one. So pause and try it on your own. Not a lot of fractions here. I think it's mostly just negative and positive exponents. All right, so multiply. So we have -4 times -2 is 8. X to the, what's 2 and -2? What's anything to the 0 power? That's 1. So 8 times 1, which is just 8. Now, this one's tricky. Because it's only really difficult because of the 2. If it wasn't for that 2, it wouldn't be bad. I'm going to distribute that -5 to everything. So I get 2 to the -5, w to the 15th, m to the -20, right? So then I'm going to rewrite it and move stuff that needs to move. W to the 15th is happy. It's not negative. That's staying. The 2 to the -5, it has to jump down. And it becomes positive, 2 to the 5th. And then the m to the -20 jumps up, becomes positive. And then lastly, what's 2 to the 5th? So m20, w to the 15th, over 2 to the 5th is 32. So that's our answer. So don't forget to take the constants numbers to the power also. So this is 12 squared, m to the 4th, n to the 12th, over 8, m to the 4th, n to the 7th. So 144, let's see, the m's cancel. Or you could write m to the 0 if that makes you happy. You don't have to. 12 minus 7 is 5, all over 8. Does 8 go into 144? I think it does. Let's see. 144 divided by 8. Yeah, 18. So 18 n to the 5th. Done. All right, and last one. So I'm going to start with my power of 2. So 3 squared is 9. So 9x to the 10th, y to the 3rd, over 2x to the 4th, y to the -7. So you can make it 4.5. You could leave it 9 over 2. I really don't care. Let's see. 9 over 2. This becomes x to the 6th, y to the 10th. So you could do that. You could do 9x to the 6th, y to the 10th over 2. You could put 4.5. It's up to you. It doesn't matter to me. All right, and that's it. We did skip the last one. Those are a little harder. I'd rather keep those for the next lesson. All right, have a great day.